Brian, what's going on, brother?
Oh, Harry, I'm fired up.
We've got places to be today.
I know. Let's get through this, man. I got to get outside and get in the heat.
Yeah, we've got a nice little road trip up to a hunt that we're doing together, and we thought it'd be a good idea just to do a little time capsule and talk through sort of how it all came together, why we're doing it, and then talk through some of your experiences too. So I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, man.
Your second appearance on the Meat Mafia podcast too.
I love it. Thanks for having me back.
So one of the things that I was excited to talk to you about is what you're doing in Austin specifically when it comes to community building. And that's sort of how this hunt came together. So you reached out to us, and through the Sapien Center, which is this physical location that you've created, you reached out and said, hey, we're hosting this hunt. And I was immediately like, this sounds awesome. Like, I need to do this. And I've never been. So I was excited to go because you explained it as there's this guy who's going to be leading us through the hunt. He's going to teach us exactly like from 0 to 1 how to actually go through it, walk everyone through the basics, and go along with someone who's already been on a hunt before. Like, it's such a valuable and unique experience. So one, thanks for the invite. And two, just really curious about how you thought about starting the Sapien Center and what was the reason behind it.
Yeah. So it's about community, right? Like sometimes I'll give a tour and I'll fall in the trap of like, oh, we have a cold plunge and we have a sauna and we have co-working. But it's like, those are just physical things. What real people want is the community. And I started thinking about this, years ago, right? That I wanted to build something like this. I think every kid has a dream, right? It's like, I'm going to have my own clubhouse. You're like, you grew up and you probably had a fort and a clubhouse when you're like 10, right? And it's like, this is the ultimate fort and clubhouse for adults.
Yeah, where you can invite your friends over, play, do all the fun things.
Exactly. That's what we do there. We play, right? It's like adult version of playing is doing workouts together and jumping in the cold plunge together and sitting around a fire. Like, we have a fire pit in the middle of Austin.
Yeah.
And it's like you're kind of in the city, but you're kind of not.
Yeah. One of the coolest things that I've noticed about Sapien Center is when people come in from out of town, I've had so many people come up to me like, have you been to this Sapien Center place? Like, have you heard about this Sapien Center place? Like, there's like there's a little bit of an allure about it because whether it's through social media or just like a bunch of different events being hosted there that people have seen, people are really interested in this concept of like getting together, creating events that are interesting and kind of outside the mainstream idea of what an event would look like, centered around booze or partying or whatever it is. So it's unique.
Yeah, we're not centered around that. I mean, it's mostly sober events, and we love to have out of town guests. And I mean, I want to make it bigger than just the Sapien Center. It's like, all right, there's a lot of people listening that aren't going to come to Austin, but it's like that's why the community aspect is so important. Or like, how can you build this in your own town? Yeah. Right? Like, how do you cultivate this community when you don't? Maybe you're not going to have all the money to do a whole Sapien Center or the time it takes to do that. So, yeah, it's what we've lost, I think, in the U.S. Maybe in other countries, they're a little more social, community, family oriented. Right? You've been to Europe, probably. You've seen like they stay together forever, right?
Definitely.
They're living in the houses together with all the different generations.
Yeah,
we don't do that. And so I brought this up to you quickly beforehand, that idea of a third place or third space. And this was kind of popularized in 1989 by this guy, Ray Oldenburg. And we've lost it. He made this whole argument that's like, we've completely lost this. We used to have first place, home, second place, work. Third place used to be a town square, a library, the town pub, the church, right? This is where people got together. And this is one of the big reasons why I think we had a better life back then, and we lived longer. Of course, we're eating more real food, and there's a lot of other factors. But if you look at the blue zones, it's like, why do these people live long? A lot of it was about the sense of community and sense of purpose and staying together. And we could get back to the blue zones later, but the idea of a third space has been lost, right?
Yeah. The idea of sharing experience with people who have shared values is pretty hard to find in today's world. Like, There are, like you were joking before we hit record, like, there's 6th Street, which is,
dirty six.
Yeah, maybe you could make the argument that everyone who's going out on 6th Street has shared values, but the experiences are kind of lost because there's so many different variables that are just make it so much different than what you were explaining those third places would be, which is a town square, a library, a church, where you're actually focused on building relationship and having deeper levels of conversation. I mean, 6th Street, I don't think you just get that.
That's the opposite. If people don't know Austin, 6th Street is where all the bars are. And it's exact opposite of what it used to be. So it's like it's technically a third space, and you are going out after your work or you're going away from your home, but it's just meaningless interactions. And I mean, yeah, I don't know anyone who's had meaningful relationships on 3rd Street. Sure, you could take someone home for the night, but this is obviously not meaningful.
Yeah.
So I think it's a huge part of being healthy is having community, having these relationships. And I was also saying before we started, like, who's an expert in community? Like, there's no one talking about it. We have all the people on diet. We have all the people on the exercise and movement. We have the sleep experts, right? We both have podcasts, right? So we have all these people on, but who's talking about community? Well, it's not like there's facts and figures.
Actually, and who's not just talking about it, building it? Because people want this stuff, but if people aren't building it, then it can't actually come together. So, like, kudos to you for going and doing it.
Well, yeah, and it's a big endeavor, right? And I'm in personal debt from it. It's
right.
Not easy. So I understand why people have not done it. And we do have plans to go into different cities and do this, right? So I get DMs all the time, like, where's the next city? Or can you do it here? Can you do it there? So Colorado and Florida, a lot of people have been reaching out. And if anyone's in St. Pete, that seems to be kind of a hotbed for freedom, health, just the same wavelength of people that want to be healthy and want to have community, and they're just gathering in Florida and St. Pete. I don't know if you've heard about that at all.
Not really. What have you observed about the Sapien Center since you've started it? Like, what have been some of the highlight moments where you're like, okay, this is actually turning into something?
Oh, wow. Yeah. In the beginning, I didn't know. It's like if you build it, they will come. Yeah. It's kind of like a hope. It's like fingers crossed. And then the first event we had was last summer when it was a construction site, before it was open at all. It was KetoCon. And there was a pile of gravel, like nothing was built. I rolled out some artificial grass and we hung some lights. And like 150 people came, and it was amazing. And
I remember.
You remember? Yeah, we're hanging with Bill Schindler and stuff, and all these speakers from KetoCon, and it was so fun. Like I couldn't even sleep that night. I was just like, it worked. It's happening.
You must have been blown away.
Absolutely blown away. It was probably one of the best nights of my whole life.
Wow.
Like, I really think about that because it was the first time that I just built something and it was there. Like, I don't know if people have been married. I've not been married. But if you're the bride and the groom, you're the people of the hour, you're glad handing, everywhere you go, it's like,
right.
And that's what it was like for me. Like, every minute on the dot, like, someone new came up to me and was like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was getting married that day, just like having 100 conversations, and like, it was incredible.
So what type of events since that first event that was not at KetoCon, but it was event after KetoCon, what type of events have you had that have stood out as meaningful, that have brought more people into the community?
Yeah, we've done a lot. We've done so many different types of events. We actually had one. So Dr. Peter is the one taking us hunting. He's been hunting since he was like 5 years old. He started early. I mean, he's been hunting for forever. And he goes hardcore. Like, he's the one that he'll get with a crossbow, a compound bow, get like a bull moose and take 2 days to like get it back home.
Wow.
Like, hike in, hike out, get half the animal back, go back and get the rest and go back again.
Where does he go for that?
He all over.
Dang.
Yeah, we'll talk to him this weekend. But
okay, cool.
He knows the whole thing. So we did an event with him semi-recently where he shot a deer, got a doe the night before. He was so confident he'd get one. He's just like, don't worry. We had like 12 people waiting, and he's just like, I got it. And of course he gets it, shows up, and we just take over the Sapien Center, and we put tarps down, and we disappear the animal.
Wow.
Disappeared it. Like, all that was left was the spine.
That's crazy.
Like, we had the spine and the skull left. Like, everything was used. We ate all the organs throughout the day. He explained how to skin it, get the organs out, all the safety stuff, like how to cut it. Somehow I was the chef of the day. Like, I barely got to see what was going on. I'm like, all of a sudden I'm a chef, and I'm smoking different deer meats. I'm doing like all these things.
Got to wear different hats if you're the man in charge.
It's fun. We learn a lot, but we ate the brains at the end. Like
Dang.
he showed us how to crack open the skull, and we got in there. We cooked them though. I cooked them with some butter and some lemon,
Cool.
a little bit of salt. It was really good. It
Wow.
tasted like pudding.
Huh.
This is like a license.
What's the name for that? I feel like there is a name for.
Oh, I don't know.
So how'd you come across him? What's
He
the
just
story there?
that's the magic of the Sapien Center. Like if you build these communities, people come out of the woodwork. You know, it's like everything. Yeah, all these good things have happened just by throwing stuff out in the world.
Yeah.
That's another thing. It's like, oh, I have a podcast. I have an Instagram. I didn't have an agenda. Well, I started making my film, Food Lies,
Right.
which we probably talked about in the first episode, so people can go back.
Yeah. Go back and listen.
Yeah, and check out the intro. The intro is really quality stuff. It took us a long time. It's on YouTube. But I just started doing these projects, and then things happen. You know, like people come out of the woodwork, and it's been so valuable for me. That's part of this message of communities. If you start doing something interesting that resonates with people, then they will come and find you.
Yeah. It's community and creation at the same time, because the creation part it's valuable for you because you're able to put your vision into the reality and actually have an impact beyond just thinking about how cool it would be to have a place, but you can share those values, the great conversations, experiences like carving up a deer. I mean, that's like you can't really find that anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I mean, people are interested in that sort of thing. And I just think it's so cool, the idea of creation. It's something that Brett and I talk a lot about with our show. You know, having done like little over 200 episodes in a year, our ability now to actually like come across people who we would never be able to come across and have a conversation with them is just on a totally different level. And if you had told us that a year ago, that we would be able to have conversations with people who are just really like changing the world, doing really cool things, my mind would have been blown. So it's just that creation element, just acting on it, it has gravity to it. People come into your world that you would never expect.
Yeah, I encourage people to do that. Not everyone has to have a podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of podcasts
There's
out
a lot
there.
of them.
And there's only so many hours in the day to listen to them. But everyone has a passion, and you can do something without having a podcast or a physical space. Right? So before I had the Sapien Center, I was like, I don't have a space yet, but that doesn't mean I can't do events.
Yeah.
So I just would have meetups, and I just use other people's spaces, right? And then just invite people, be an organizer.
Yeah.
And now what's cool about the Sapien Center is I'm allowing other people to do that. So all of our members, they pitch me events, and they can have their own event. And so there's this lady, I don't know what's the proper term, girl, lady, woman, this nice female. Because I don't want to, she's not old, but you know what I mean? She's a respectable woman. She does neurographics, and she's really interested in the brain and science, and she's like really smart, and she does this art like experience with art and drawing and your brain and goal setting and how your brain works, and it's incredible, and people love it. And she would never be able to do that unless, well, she probably could, but I just allowed her to have it at Sapien, and that's the type of stuff that happens. Is like, well, who knows what that is? She just invented a whole new thing. And now she has a community, and they met again last night.
Yeah, that's so cool. And to your point about the community building, we've been doing a run on Tuesdays and then just grilling at our place on Saturdays and just keeping it consistent. And as long as you keep it consistent, people are dying to just have something to go to. So, I mean, I'm sure you felt that with Sapien Center. People are now probably just thirsty for more events and want to come check out the new like crazy thing that's happening in the world of alternative health.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a story about Austin. That's kind of why I moved to Austin.
Yeah.
Is I knew this stuff was happening, that other people were doing this. So there's this guy, Anthony. Well, there's two Anthonys that brought me here a little bit. But one of them had this coffee meetup. And every Saturday morning, this was a couple years ago, 2.5 years ago, during COVID, they would just have a hangout at like, I don't know, was it 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.? And they just bring different coffee companies in to give away free coffee. And it just grew, and it was consistent. And it was beautiful. It's like, this is what Austin's about. I met people there that I'm still great friends with. It's incredible what you can do. And they just did it out of their place.
Yeah. Yeah. The consistency is kind of the key. You need to create like the order so people can expect and have confidence and trust that it's going to be there. But like to your point, like with the run group that we started, was a kid last week who was like, this is officially like a part of my week. Like I know I'm doing this on Tuesdays, which is cool because we've probably been doing it for like 12 weeks. And just seeing the impact that can have, like I see the same people every Tuesday morning. Like it's that third place concept, right? Where you can share, an hour or so in a different place outside of work in the home and just have that really great experience that's builds the bond over time.
I just want everyone to think of what they're passionate about, and like figure out a way to do it, and just be the organizer. Like again, you don't have to have a podcast, you don't have to dedicate your life to this, but you can do something to build that community, and that's what's missing. I'm telling you, everyone just goes back home to their little apartment and they just live in their own little space. And it's crazy. It's like that's the best times in your life are with other people.
Right.
I even did this thought experiment. This goes beyond a little bit. This even into money and like possessions and why you don't even need to worry about that stuff. Like I did a thought experiment of, okay, what if I had an arbitrary, insane amount of money, right? What if you had $100 million? It just fell into your lap. What would you do? Like, what would your ideal day be? Like, what would it be like? Like, envision what your day would be like. Like, I don't want to hear like, oh, I'm in a mansion and there's like a yacht. I mean, some that can be part of it, maybe. But like, what do you want to experience? Like, what is the most ideal day?
Mine personally would honestly be so similar to what I'm doing now.
That's exactly what I'm saying, right? Like, well, tell me, because
I mean, I would probably have a moderately nicer place to live, and like maybe like my car is 200,000 miles, I'll get a little bit of a nicer car, and then I would do so much of the same stuff. Like I wake up, go to the gym at like 5 or 6 o'clock. So maybe get like, sauna, cold plunge, gym. Like that's a huge part of my day. And then, I would still be doing all the same things, podcasting, working on building brands, thinking about how we can improve the food system, different projects in that realm. I mean, those are like all the things that I'm interested in doing and would just continue to do those. I don't think that my life would redirect all that much if I had $100 million in the bank.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you can skip ahead to that. It's like, I mean, it's fun to try to build brand, and I'm into that too. And I want to build some things, but like once I get there, I'm still gonna be doing the same things, and I'm gonna be just as happy.
Yeah.
But you also got to think about, so then what else? Like who would you spend time with, or what else would go on?
Yeah. I mean, I think building community, building family, like starting a family, that sort of thing is definitely things that come to mind. Just trying to bring more people into the world of like kind of the world that we're living in, where it's like you don't need to be attached to a corporate job, kind of helping people cultivate confidence in themselves and belief in themselves to start working on projects that have meaning to them. Like one thing that's been impactful for me over the past year is like actually going to church and building a relationship with my pastor, who's also part of this run group that I'm a part of. Like that wouldn't leave my life at all. That would still be in it if I had $100 million. And the reason I bring that up is like he's taught me a lot about the importance of not only having a mentor, but also having someone to teach down to. So, I mean, again, these are all things that like money just doesn't even affect. Like you can do that today.
And then what would you do for dinner? Like, and who would be there? Like
the same stuff. I mean, I would be growing steak. I would be inviting friends over. Like I was telling you, we do these steak Saturdays. We get a bunch of steaks from either Whole Foods or Shirttail Creek. We invite like 5 to 10 people over on Saturdays. And I mean, we basically do that during the week anyways, but we just don't invite a whole lot of people over. But, or like, what the usual meals look like, ground beef and all that stuff. But like, I take to this, what you're talking about very much, because it's how I've lived the past 12 months. Like I left my corporate job to intentionally start like a fresh new life, new experience in Austin. And I was like, money aside, just like focus on what you want to be doing. Because I'd kind of fallen into the trap of like thinking that I needed to save money to have these future experiences. And it was really like, no, just start living that way as soon as you possibly can. And then your life will start to gain traction around that stuff, and you'll see those improvements. And I mean, I wouldn't change what I do today for anything.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, the exact same thing. It's the ultimate goal, is to have the community. It's like that's what matters most when you die, right? People say that a lot. It's like people don't say they wanted to spend more time in the office.
Yeah,
They say
definitely.
they want to spend more time with family, community,
Yeah.
right? What another ultimate goal in life is to be without want. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. If you have, there's people that have $100 million and they still have want, right?
Yeah.
They're just constantly, oh, I need a bigger yacht now.
That's the saddest thing to see, because you
Hmm.
know that there's basically no way out of that for them at that point.
Oh, they're doomed, and they'll try to get more money, and then they'll be less happy because they won't have something else that someone else has. So without want means that you probably have community. It's not really about possessions, probably. Maybe some people are obsessed with possessions. I don't care. I don't have a watch. I don't have nice clothes. I don't have a nice car. I mean, I have an old car that I like and is nice in my
Yeah.
eyes.
Yeah.
But I don't need new things. It's just about being. I'm without want now. And sure, I'm not saying that I don't want anything, right? But it's not like I'm like, man, I need to get this money so that I can get this new car. I'm like, my car's great.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. People should like try to find ways to do this and do thought experiments and think like, how can I get there now without having to have all this stuff?
Yeah. Curating your lifestyle is a massive unlock. Like, trying to just put the things in your life that you're envisioning as quickly as possible. And an example of this is I recently joined a gym off South Congress called The Collective, and it has a really interesting group of people. It's a social club, and all these people are in the entrepreneurial space.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I was hesitant to make the decision to actually join the club, but there was so much benefit in terms of the people who are there, like what they were doing. They're all like, you go in the sauna, they're completely inspiring. It's like going in the sauna at Sapien or Squatch. Basically,
Yeah.
I mean, any of the communities that we're a part of in Austin, you just come across all these inspiring people, but it was a higher price tag. And so I just looked at it as an investment, but that has now been like a massive part of like my morning routine. Like, I go over there, the community there is great. And just being able to kind of just like stomach the cost and think of it as something that is an investment in like your lifestyle and making you happy, and those things are definitely worth it.
It is. And it's about the people. Again,
Yeah.
it's like, yes, you were in a sauna, and so that is a physical thing, but what mattered was the people.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking about the Sapien Center, any of these places, it's all the same concept. It's like, let's reverse engineer a place where people can bond and grow together. So it's like, yes, you have to have, say, a gym and a sauna and a cold plunge and co-working. These are kind of just physical things that facilitate the end goal, which is creating chance opportunities to meet people and just create, like, you can't do that if you're just home in your apartment. You need I just connected with a couple of people yesterday. It's just, who's showing up to the Sapien Center? And then this other investor guy like showed up, and then we're hanging out, and then these people are talking. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to the community. It's the people. And sometimes, yes, you have to invest in that. But I wanted to get back to the Blue Zone stuff too, because like this community stuff is so important, right? It's like, why do people live long in these Blue Zones? And there's a guy, Dan Buettner, that wrote a book about it, and his bias was vegetarianism, right? And he went around the world trying to basically retrofit his bias into what was happening. And so he cherry-picked different places, and like cherry-picked even when he even went to a place during Lent when they gave up meat. It's like, no one's eating meat just
like,
for this month.
Surprise.
Yeah. It's like, then they're crushing meat nonstop every other month of the year.
Yeah.
And one of these places is Sardinia. And I think, is it Sardinia? Yeah, there's some Greek islands.
In Greece?
Yeah. And I think Bill Schindler just went there, and also my friend Mary Ruddick. I don't know if you heard
No,
Mary
I don't know who
Ruddick.
that is.
She's great. She took us to Africa, which we can get into some Africa
Yeah, we'll
stuff.
get into it in a sec.
So she's been going around to all these Blue Zones, and I went to Nicoya Peninsula. That's in Costa Rica. It's another one of these Blue Zones. And all that they find is people eating animals nose to tail. And you go to these Greek islands, and these people are old. They're 90-something. They're actually like drinking and smoking, which is really weird.
Wow.
But they have such a good diet lifestyle community that they're just chugging along and doing great. And they're eating all the organ meats. They're eating fat. They're just eating goats and sheep nose to tail.
And they spend so much time outside too. I mean,
outside
they're
walking,
sunlight.
It's all the things. There's all the boxes checked, right? Yes, it's the movement, it's the outdoors, it's the food, it's real food. I actually don't care that much your ratio of plant to animal foods, as long as you're eating whole foods, right? Like if you're getting enough animal nutrition and you're avoiding all the processed foods, you can do okay. I'm not saying it's ideal, but for me, or I don't know, I think in the long term, I wouldn't do it with tons and tons of plant foods, but there's plenty of populations that live long and are pretty healthy eating more plant foods than animals, but they're eating all whole foods and they're eating a large source of animal nutrition.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest missing piece for a lot of people is the sunlight. And like the sunlight creates vitamin D in your body, which is an antioxidant. And a lot of things people talk about with plant toxicity is the oxalates and how it's inflammatory because it creates oxidation in the body. So there's probably something there where like if you spend more time outside, you're not going to be as susceptible to the negative side effects or negative consequences of eating foods that might cause some inflammation.
You can handle it, and also you're eating seasonally.
Yeah.
These people, like if you eat plant foods seasonally, you're not going to get an overload of oxalates.
Right.
You're not going to get an overload of anything. That's the whole point of seasons, kind of. It's like how it works is that it changes.
Yeah.
And I've kind of become acutely aware of this traveling around the world and noticing and living with these, not living with these people, but staying with these people. And they live from the land. It's like of course they're going to live long. They're eating all the whole foods. Right, they're outside, they're doing, they're walking, movement, and then they have the sense of community and purpose, and they live together, and they have multi-generational families living together, and and it's like they're almost doing that in spite of not eating enough animal foods. Maybe.
Right.
Let's say Okinawa as an example, and it's like that's just what they had. They were trying to eat fish. They thought pork was a longevity food. Like you can look it up. It's like they regarded pork as a longevity food, but they just had a whole bunch of sweet potatoes, actually, not rice. This was before. This is in the 50s when these people were living really long, and this is the base of their diet was like sweet potatoes, fish, some vegetables, pork. Like, what's wrong with that diet?
Yeah, I mean it's perfectly fine.
And maybe they could do better if they had more. But they probably were eating like really nose to tail. They do. They eat the whole fish. They eat they're eating the heads. They're eating everything.
Yeah.
And they have purpose. They're not in a box. You're not in their own little apartment box. Like all these places, it's like more of an actual community.
Yeah. The one thing that we've kind of just been hinting on is we have this view on health where we try to look at everything in a silo. So it's like nutrition in a silo, exercise in a silo, community in a silo, but it's this web, and people will fixate on diet and then completely ignore the community aspect or the exercise aspect. And that's fine. You can see results. But when it all comes together, that's when you're that's full health. That's when you're feeling alive. There's full meaning in your life. Your body and mind are clear. Like that's the key. That's what people should be striving for, is not just trying to look linearly at one of these different areas of health, but tie it all together. I mean, I think that's what Austin does really well, is it ties, there's people here who are trying to tie all these things into the web of health. And it's not just this like mechanistic industrial way of looking at things where it's like, this is one area of health.
That's just so important. This is kind of wrapping it all together, because that's what I've noticed. And that's what happens at Sapien Center, what happens around Austin, is people look different. They're magnetic. People glowing. People come to events and they're like, what is going on with these people? Why is everyone healthy and fit and tan and awesome and friendly? Yeah. It's like, you bring it all together. And I actually went to a biohacking conference for the first time. I'm not in that world, I actually am almost the opposite of that world. I'm like,
I don't love the whole biohacking.
How do I not have any gadgets? I don't want gadgets. I don't want all the gizmos. I want to just eat a steak in the sun and lift some weights outside. And totally different crowd. And then it goes to your point. These people, it wasn't like, I'm like, man, look at all these glowing, amazing, healthy people. It was a bunch of people that didn't look that healthy. And they're just trying to rely on if I just get enough blue blocking things and this ring and this thing and this machine where I sit in it, then I'm going to be healthy. Like, no, you're missing everything.
Like, that might actually be the least healthy group of people.
I don't want to diss that crowd, but it wasn't great. I found a few people.
Yeah.
There was a vegan girl actually. It was
For
very,
real?
very
Interesting.
Yeah, she was fit. It was weird.
Did you try to convince her?
Oh, we had many, many hours together.
Interesting.
I'm still working on. We're gonna. I have a phone call set up with her soon.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I want to dive into the hunt that we're going on because that was one of the reasons I wanted to have this podcast. And I just want to tie it into what you're doing at the Sapien Center. So, like, what was the impetus to schedule this one? Is this the first one you've done?
Yeah, this is the first one. So it started with Dr. Peter's workshop on like how to completely break down an animal and eat the whole thing. And so the next progression was this hunt. And this is, yes, more for beginners. And I consider myself a beginner, absolutely. I've only been hunting once in Texas and then once with the Hadza. Well, it was multiple days. So yes, this is for us to start, learning. And we went to an archery thing, we were practicing. We'll use guns on this trip, but I want to get to where we can use a compound bow.
Wow.
And he knows all that. So yeah, this is just dipping our toes in the water. We're going to do another one in fall as well.
Awesome. And so your past hunting experiences, have they been in Texas?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Texas and Africa.
And what'd you hunt for in Texas?
It was just axis deer, a couple other, it wasn't whitetail season.
Okay.
So it was like anything but whitetail. And sadly, I only saw whitetail.
Really?
We saw a few. There was like some, black, what is it? Red blacktails. Yeah, I don't know.
So from your first hunting experience to this one, do you feel like you're going to continue along the learning curve? Like, were there things that you were thinking about on that first hunt? Like, for me right now, this is my first hunt. Mm-hmm. So I've got all the questions in the world. I'm kind of just like throwing caution to the wind. I'm just like, just go, just show up. Like, I want to kill an animal, but if I don't even pull the trigger, it's just about being there and being involved and just learning. So I'm curious, like, what your first experience was like.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. I didn't even know what to expect. And you are nervous about it. You're like, I don't know. Yeah, what's going to happen? Am I going to feel weird? Am I going to be able to like pull the trigger? Am I going to? And you just got to go with it. Yeah, like it's hard to prepare for. I think it's one of those things you have to get reps. Not that I know all this stuff. Like, I'm not the hunting expert, but from what I've seen, is you just get the reps and then you're living it. It's like it's not like this guy, Dr. Peter, was doing it overnight. He started at a young age and it became like his thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm glad to be doing it with him, and he knows like every aspect of it. So
yeah, whenever I'm trying something new, I try to frame it through the lens of something that I've been doing for a long time and I'm good at. So I always reference the gym. And like, I remember like the first few times getting to the gym, it's like, you just gotta like go to the gym and just be around the people who are like already fit, and you'll eventually get there and learn what they do, but you just need to show up.
You need to show up. And I'm scared. I'm like, avoid things that I'm not good at.
Yeah.
Right? I think a lot of people do that. And like, that's not a good way to live.
Yeah.
You got to put yourself out of your comfort zone.
Well, learning something new is such a, there is some like neuroplasticity type of thing going on there where you do break the mold of your existing paradigm. And I think there's so much growth that can come out of just pulling yourself out of your daily routine and all this stuff and just going in like headfirst into something new and trying to learn it. And this like hunting stuff is definitely going to be it.
That's it. And I did kind of throw myself in the deep end too, 2 years ago, almost 2.5 years ago, with the Hadza. Just to get to that, because I have these things.
Yeah. Show and tell. Let's see what we got here.
It was crazy though. Paul Saladino came. It was this weird thing where he went a little early, and then people know he got sick from the berries. Do you remember that story?
No,
No. So we like crossed paths. He was supposed to continue on with us, and he went home. But it was so cool to do this, and yeah, he did an all-day hunt with them. We worked up to it. We spent a few days with them, and then we did this all-day hunt. We didn't bring enough water. It was bad. We almost brought no water.
Wow. Like, what were you guys thinking?
I don't know. I'm like looking back, like, are we insane? And they don't even need water. They're crazy.
Really?
They just don't even care about water. And if they find water, they'll drink water out of the crook of a tree. There's like a baobab tree, and it collects water in the crook of it.
Yeah.
And it's brown. And there was this one younger guy that was there. I think he's just going up into the male hunting group, so he's probably like 16 or 15. And he would just climb up and like get a baobab, like half of a shell, and they scoop it out, and it's just brown water, and they take a few sips, and that's what they had like the whole day.
Wait, so how do they not? need water?
I think they just have different physiology. They don't drink salt. They don't have a lot of salt. It's like they get salt from the blood.
Oh, wow.
It's not like they have salt. They
Yeah.
like things without salt. They just eat unseasoned meat. I had to eat, basically, I ate a lot of unseasoned meat. It was like really tough.
So, I mean, there couldn't be a bigger culture shock going from Austin to like the middle of nowhere, Africa, and going on a hunting trip. What were some of the takeaways?
It was crazy. It was crazy. Yeah. I learned so much. I mean, the first thing we did was eat that whole animal. They already had one by the time we showed up. It was this little tic-tic. It was like this little baby antelope type of thing, or smaller antelope. And yeah, they just slice it open. They take the guts out. They give them to the dogs. They have a whole pack of dogs too. They're just their buddies that come help them hunt. And they eat everything but those guts, right? The Hadza do. And immediately this guy has this knife that's covered in, it's just never been washed, obviously. This was also during COVID. Not that I took any precautions during COVID. I was like, I'm going to wash my hands less during COVID. I need like microbiome.
Give me the germs.
Yeah. And so that's how they live their life. People are like, oh, how do they have such a good microbiome? Like, well, they have a knife that's never been washed. They're sitting in the dirt, cutting open an animal.
Yeah.
And we're eating off that knife. So they just immediately go for the liver. They cut out the liver and cut me a piece. And it has guts on it. It has like white and yellow guts on it. The knife is the oldest, dirtiest knife on the planet. And they just give it to me.
What was going through your head
and
at this point?
I'm like, oh, I got to eat it. Like, I'm just like, yeah. I'm going. And I ate it. And the guy was like, oh, this dude's eating it? Like, this white dude is eating it.
Wow.
Because usually, this one group we were with, we were two different groups. The first group does have contact with tourists.
Okay.
Right? So it's good and bad, right? We get to see their lifestyle, and they allow people to hunt with them and all that. But they'll just have tourists come by and give them candy. And so they're just kind of posting up all day, just hanging out, and then going hunting, and then hanging out. And it's different, right? That they're getting treats, they're getting these things, they're contact, all these tourists. So it's not like the full thing, but they also do just live the same way in a sense, right? It's like they're not relying on candy to survive. They're like, they have to go get food.
Right. So from that experience, like, is there even any comparison between that experience and your hunting in Texas?
It's so different. It's so different. I mean, here, I'll grab some stuff.
Yeah. What'd you bring?
So, yeah, this is an arrow. So I know not everyone's watching, but watch it on YouTube. So they make these arrows by hand. Obviously, there's feathers, there's sinew, and then some of their arrows have metal tips. So they just roll out with their bow, which is, just completely handmade bow with the sinews as the thing. And then they have like, say, 6 arrows in their hand. So it's just bow kind of on the shoulder, in the hand. No, they have it in one hand. Oh,
I lost the arrowhead.
So and some of the arrows have just wooden tips, so they just sharpen the tip.
Wow.
And that's I think it's for birds. Oh, no, the birds have a corn cob on them. They have all different arrows that have different tips for different animals. So for smaller things, you can just use the wood tip. But then there's a tribe called the Datoga. And the Datoga are kind of the blacksmiths. And they all live in this Lake Eyasi area. And there's just tons and tons of different tribes that live in this one area. It's kind of the last remaining hunter-gatherers and pastoralists, right? Some of them have cattle and sheep and goats and stuff. And so the Toga do blacksmiths. So they collect nails and random like pipes and stuff. So they'll go around to kind of more of civilization, find random bits of metal, and then they have, the bellows that blow the air on the fire. They make those out of like a cow's stomach. And they just figured out how to blacksmith using the bellows and they'll melt the metal and then make the tips, and then they trade with the Hadza. So this tip is maybe for baboons. So they hunt baboon. They hunt. They don't have a lot of animals to hunt, right? Before, I'm fascinated by all this history. Mickey Bendora, you probably had on.
No, we haven't.
Oh, Mickey Bendora is amazing. Wrote the paper, Man, the Fat Hunter. He's like a PhD and.
Oh wow!
You got it.
Is Mickey a guy or a girl?
It's a guy. He's in Europe. I forget where it was.
We'll have to get him on.
Oh,
that'll be a great episode.
He's a legend. But he talks about how for like 1 million years we hunted giant woolly mammoth.
I mean, we hunted them into extinction.
Yes. And we would have giant fatty animals. And even in North America, we could have giant bison roaming. Or there was megafauna. Huge megafauna, right? So all this stuff. Now, the Hadza have nothing left but some baboons and the little baby deer, the little baby antelope.
Right.
And these little bush babies. Looks like a little Furby. It's like this big. And that's all they have left.
Wow.
So there's also this thing of the modern scientists that study them, they're like, oh, they eat so much starch and the tubers and the plants. I'm like, that's all they have left. They're not trying to eat that.
Right.
Like they are trying to get meat. They are hunting. That's all they want. They are trying to get as much animal food as they can. And the women are back home eating these tubers. And they are these giant tubers. There's not like a sweet potato. It's this giant fibrous tuber. And they have to put them by the fire. And you eat them. They're not eating the fiber. So they're chewing on this stuff. And then they're spitting it out. And all they're doing is getting a bit of glucose from the starch. So, and I tried it too. So you look around them, the women are sitting there all day just hanging out while the men go hunting. There's just piles of this fibrous stuff. It's like chewing on sugarcane. You can't eat sugarcane. You can chew on it and get the sugar out.
Right.
But then you spit out the fibrous stuff. So I think there's this medical, these PhDs, like they go out there with their bias. They think that fiber is magical. They don't know why they have such a good microbiome. And then they go and they see them eating like this giant tuber. And I think it's a bit of fraud where they just measure the entire tuber and they're like, oh, they're eating like hundreds of grams of fiber.
Interesting.
But they're not eating the fiber.
Wow.
That's just a side story.
Wild.
Yeah. And I've seen, and this is, I don't know, I want to confront one of these scientists that study the Hadza. Like these people, they're bringing their like plant-based bias. They're like modern diet bias. Because I've talked to these guys. Herman Poncer. He's kind of a famous PhD out of Harvard.
I'm familiar with him.
Yeah, and he declined. I was going to do a podcast with him, and he backed out because he didn't like my.
He knew.
Yeah, and these guys, they go and they think they want to see how much fiber they're eating. They think that's why they have a good microbiome. They're not eating this fiber. They're not trying to eat fiber. They're eating meat and honey and fruit and chewing on some stuff. And I think why they have the good microbiome is, like I said, they're eating off the ground. They're having dirty knives. They're like, they don't have.
It's like
Purell.
Our podcast with Joel Salatin, he says he drinks right out of the cow trough.
Exactly. He's a genius.
Yeah.
So yeah, here's the arrow. Like they make these by themselves, right? It's like they collected some of this wood and I had to carry it back for them. They're like, oh, carry this for us. Because they just always, have to make new arrows. So yes, like I was saying, they have different tips for each animal. Here's another tip.
I'm curious, what was the relationship like on the hunt in between the different guys? Was there a clear like leader who is gonna be the guy who ended up like getting the kill? Or like how was the dynamic between the guys on the hunt?
So there was a leader. So they're pretty egalitarian in the sense it's not like this guy like makes all the decisions.
Right.
So there was the leader who was supposedly the best hunter, right? And he wasn't the oldest. He was a middle-aged guy. There was older guys that would go and they were not the leader. But it also, it's not like he was leading the pack. Like it was this flowing thing where people were just like going in front. Like some people were going in front and then we were just trying to keep up the whole time, and they were just moving, and they kind of split up and go, fan out and then come back. It was just, there was no order to it. It wasn't like, oh, we're gonna go hunting at this time. And I read about this too. They're just, it's not like they have orders. They're like, let's go hunting, or like I'm gonna go hunting, come with me, or you come with me, we're gonna go hunting. It's more like I'm gonna go hunting. Does anyone want to come? Right. And I've read about this in studies, and this is what I saw. It's also, there's no sense of time. They don't have a sense of like tomorrow or yesterday, or even like, let's go hunting at this time. We just showed up and we're just milling around on the second day. And then all of a sudden it's like someone just gets up and starts running. And then we're just like, oh, I guess we're going. And they just go. Yeah, they just go. And we're like, and we're like, grab the cameras. And, we're trying to carry all these cameras. And they just went, and it wasn't organized. It's not like this is the time we're going to do it. They just kind of go with the flow.
So what was the cue? Like, is there
no
anything
idea.
That's so crazy.
They just go. They're just like, it's time.
Let's do it.
And someone's like, it just takes off. And everyone's like, all right, let's do it. And, they kind of live their life like that. That's the beauty of it. It's pure community, right? It's all they have is community. They're just together. And it's kind of like a vacation. They just hang out by the fire. And they actually like smoke bushweed. They have like weed grows around there, and they're just like smoking. And they're just posting up. They're singing. They're like practicing with the arrows. They're just hanging out all day. Yeah.
Do they seem like? How would you compare their level of fulfillment?
Oh, they're without want.
Yeah,
without want. We tried to ask them. So our guide, was amazing. He grew up in Lake Eyasi. He's in a different tribe, but he speaks so many languages, of course, English. And we're like, do they want to come? Like, do they want to visit the U.S.? And he's just like, they don't even think about that. Like, you know what I mean? We're like, don't they want to like come see an airplane? And like what? No, they don't think about that.
So interesting.
They don't think about yesterday, tomorrow. They're just in the moment. It's crazy.
Yeah. Wow. So what do you got there?
So this second one, this is for baboons. So if you can't see it, it has all these barbs on it. So this goes into the baboon, and then they try to pull it out because baboons have hands.
Right.
And they're like, so these barbs make it so they can't pull it out. But this is what they're left hunting with.
I mean, that's incredible that they're making.
Well, the Datoga made this one. So yeah, they traded with the Hadza. But it's kind of sad that they're that's why I was talking about the giant animals that they used to have. And now they have to get baboons. I mean, these are very close to humans.
Yeah.
I did not eat the baboon. Like I ate the brain of the little antelope. I ate the whole, the liver. We're eating the whole thing, but I did not touch the baboon. That thing looked gross, and it's just like, ugh, it's too much, right?
Yeah.
It's like this thing has hands. Like yeah, but that's what they have. They don't have all the big animals are in the reserves, right? There's always this like story of the government kind of just taking over.
Yeah, and
that was consistent across Africa. When we went to visit the pygmies as well, people might have heard about the pygmies. They're pushed off their land. You heard Justin Wren. He's doing these projects. They're pushed off their land. They can't get any food. They're starving. They're poor. It's a nightmare. We visited the pygmy as well. This is the machete. This is from the pygmy. They made this machete, and I got it home. I got this.
So what would they use this for? I mean, cutting into trees?
Yeah, just everything. They just roll around with it. They try to trap some animals.
This thing's
still
pretty sturdy.
Yeah, they chop down. They're.
Do you use this to cut steak?
Not yet. They're eating like corn stalks though. Like I was there in this little community, and they're pushed off their land. They have nowhere to go. They have this tiny little area, and these kids were like chewing on corn stalks for breakfast. Like not corn, just like the corn stalk.
The original cornflakes.
Oh man. Yeah. So this kid had this machete and it just like chopping at a corn stalk that has like zero nutrition in it and just chewing on it for some calories. Yeah.
So were you surprised by their health in any way, either positive or negative?
Oh, yeah, it's a hard story because as they get pushed off their land and as they have to rely more and more on like sacks of corn flour, they are getting unhealthier. It's kind of like seeing America in slow motion. So we kind of saw all the different groups as we went way out to the second group I mentioned, the Hadza, that didn't contact tourists a lot. They were the healthiest, right? Great teeth, giant teeth and jaws, the whole Weston Price thing, right?
Yeah.
Just amazing. Like this girl lives in a hut. She lives in a hut on the ground. Never heard of a dentist or orthodontist, and I have a video of just like tooth model. Like she would be like on a Crest commercial.
Wow.
Like incredible. Like these guys.
Do they brush their teeth?
No. Well, this group, they had sticks. So there's a certain stick they use, and they kind of use it as a toothpick. And it's a little bit, they kind of brush your teeth, but not really. No, it's just more like brushing off fat. Like if you get gristle in your teeth, they're just kind of like, let's get that out of here. But no, they're incredibly healthy. The further away you get from society, the healthier they are. We were in the city, they were a mess, right? There's this Maasai people that live in the city, but they still come from the same line, and they were not doing well. And they're just eating modern foods.
What was there that was causing them, like, is there fast food there? Or
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
This is in Arusha in Tanzania, and they have, they're like frying stuff in oil, and they're, it's all coming in it's just like the slow motion, right? It's coming in slowly, like into United States
right
style. And then there was the in-between too, which was interesting, where it was a more agricultural society. So they weren't hunter and gathering, and they weren't in the city. And these people, like I said, it was like getting to the United States, like halfway there. Like you could see, we had this tribe of elders. We organized this big group of elders we were going to learn from them and talk to them. And we didn't know they're an agricultural community. So they did not have a lot of meat. And these people were healthier than Americans, but they were not healthy like the Hadza, like the older people in the Maasai, the people that lived traditionally with the whole foods and the animal-based diets. They were like robust and running around, and this guy was running up a hill, and all living long and strong. And this group that they were relying on cornmeal and just plants or just eating bananas and just random stuff, and they barely had any meat. They were hunched over. They were had joint pain. Had all these signs of chronic disease.
Wow.
And this whole thing ended early because they couldn't even sit still. They started just like walking home, like during our interview with them. And
so interesting.
Yeah, I'm like, so there is something to this like having enough animal nutrition. They were eating whole foods, right? Because it's kind of going against what I said earlier. As long as you're eating whole foods, you're okay. It's like you're kind of not okay if you're just relying on these really low quality. Like they get like sacks of corn flour and they have to live on this cornmeal and they call it ugali and they mix it with water and it gives them calories to survive. But if you're just eating a few bananas and some cornmeal and you don't have any animal nutrition, or you get like an egg once in a while,
yeah,
you're not going to do well.
Yeah. I mean, nutrient density is like the paradigm shift away from the calorie model. And I feel like you just described it perfectly, where it's like they're still eating real food, but they're not eating real nutritious food. So their health is obviously not as good as the tribes who are eating animal products. You mentioned your relationship with Bill Schindler. Have you talked to him about hunting?
Yeah. So there's one thing. So where is it? He made me this arrowhead, this obsidian arrowhead. So I brought this as well. So he's amazing. People should look him up. He had his own TV show at one point. Yeah. He made that in like 5 minutes while he was talking to me.
5 minutes.
And he just chipped it away and made it. So he's a legend. He does experimental archaeology. He does like kind of paleoanthropology work. He does food science stuff. He kind of goes around the world like learning about how people properly prepare plant foods. Well, he's very nose to tail, like animal based. He's like, yes, everywhere I go, it's animal nutrition, nose to tail. And when they eat plant foods, they properly prepare them. And that's a fermenting, soaking, sprouting, doing all this stuff to get rid of the anti-nutrients. And they're not doing it year round. So that's really interesting. But what else he does is talk about get back to hunting, is how much of the animal they use. So he did a study. I think he did it with his students because he used to be a professor in Maryland at this college. And they did a study where they look at took a deer and it's like what the normal cuts that you get from it, right? It's like how people normally eat meat. And then they did the deer nose to tail, right? And he's like, this is how we do it. We like trim off all the things. We're eating the bone marrow. We're eating it all. Double the amount of calories. Double the amount of calories when you eat the animal properly.
So basically what you're saying is that even in like the animal-based community, people are just eating too many of like the prime cuts, the ground beef, and not getting into the bone marrows. Bone marrow has an insane
it's a lot of calories. Yeah.
Insane amount of calories, but there's other cuts too that are just forgotten about.
Organs, fat. A lot of fat is thrown away too.
Yeah,
right? There's a lot of trim.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it's like I have this whole new picture of fat and all the offcuts. I'm like, I used to think that stuff was garbage. You know, you have this perception. It's like, oh, this is just the offcuts. This is like the junk, or like they throw in a hot dog. I mean, hot dog is bad for different reasons because they use nitrates or like, other additives. But it's actually good. That's why I flipped the paradigm. It's like, oh, no. This is all the collagenous bits and the different things that round out the nutrition from the muscle meat. You want to eat all those weird stuff. It isn't bad. Yeah. It's just our perception is that it's low quality and bad.
Yeah.
Right? But it's giving you the different amino acids that you need.
Yeah, it's complete. And there's always a way to prepare it to make it taste like better or get nutrients out of it that you would otherwise not be able to get. Like I think of bone broth as just like this incredible invention that you get collagen, you get protein, you get sodium, minerals, you get calcium. There's so much in it. It's so good for your gut. There's like so many benefits. Yeah. But if you forget about it, if you don't like use the bones and put it in water and do the whole process, then you don't get any of those benefits.
You're missing out. I mean, that's like our whole modern diet is like that.
Yeah.
Even if you're doing it well, there's still a lot to get from the animal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've got me jacked up for the hunt. What should I expect? What would you get? What advice would you give to the first timer?
Be ready to be hot and sit in a blind. It's not all fun and games, you know? Yeah. It's like we're gonna be sitting there and we're gonna be waiting. You gotta be patient, and just be ready, man. Just be ready to pull that trigger.
I'm so excited. It's going to be fun. How many other guys are going, by the way?
We have 11 total. Not everyone's hunting.
Okay.
So
cool.
we're going to be at a house as our home base. Some people are going to hang at the house. And yeah, we're going to go hunting. I think we're going to have 4 hunts. So it's like
Nice.
evening, morning.
Cool.
So we have 4 opportunities.
Do you think everyone will go on all 4 of the hunts who signed up?
No, some people are going to skip some.
We'll chill.
But yeah, we'll do it
I'm
more.
gonna get out there.
Oh, we're going to do it.
Yeah, that's gonna be great.
Well, then, yeah.
I'm excited to get out there. I know we got to get rolling here, so appreciate the time, and this weekend's gonna be sweet.
Oh man, let's do it.
Let's do it. Thanks, brother.
Yeah.